studio. My name is Rod Moore. I'm a full-time artist and art teacher, and welcome to this week's Art Studio Chat. So I want to talk to you today about the 4 stages of learning anything. And I think it's important to understand if you're on a journey right now of learning how to paint or learning to become an artist in whatever mode or modality that you choose. It's exactly the same thing when I played guitar and I learned to sing many years ago. Right? Don't ask me to sing now. It was the same process, right? So learning any skill or craft, you go through the same basic process. And I think it's important to have an awareness of what that process is, because here's what happens with a lot of people. A lot of people get excited about learning to paint, and then they go and get all their materials, and then they enroll in a course, or they watch some videos on YouTube, and then they have a go. And then they hit a period that I call frustration period, right? And I know this because I've done this myself. I went through a long period of frustration, but I've also got the unique advantage that through the Learn to Paint Academy, I've taught more than 25,000 students around the world. I get lots of email and interaction with those students, and I get a sense that they all hit the same frustration. And I know exactly why that is. And so hopefully this video will reach out to people who are in that frustration period, right? Another way to look at it is it's the gestation period, right? Where you're developing and percolating as an artist, right? And when you emerge out the other side of that, it's a liberating experience and it'll change your world. But here's what happens with most people. They quit during that frustration period. Some of us quit that very first sign of frustration. And I did this, so I know, right? So in 2006, I walked into a $2 shop to buy a coffee mug and turned around and I found myself in the art supply section, and my heart went, I'd love to have a go at that, right? So I bought everything. You know, this little voice in my brain said, Rod, just buy everything and let's go and become an artist. Took it all home. I had no idea what I was doing, and did my very first little painting, a little 8x10. And it was pretty shocking. It was bad. I've still got it here, and maybe I'll show you in another video. It wasn't a good painting, and obviously I had no idea what I was doing. So how could it be anything but not a good painting, right? But here's what I did. I assumed I had no talent to be an artist. In my brain, I reasoned that people who are good artists must have been born with some sort of unique skill or gift. Now, if you've ever thought that, then go and watch my other video where I talk about you're so lucky, I'd love to be a great artist like you, right? An email that I received. So I did that in 2006. I packed everything into a box and it went under the bed, not to be looked at for another 2 years, right? So I hit a moment of frustration. I looked at the painting. I thought, that's not really a masterpiece, right? I don't know what I was thinking, that I was going to go and do one painting and it was going to be a masterpiece worthy of hanging in the Louvre, right? Yeah, no, it's not going to happen. But, you know, our brains tell us crazy things. So I made the assumption that I had no talent, no skill. I'm not meant to be an artist. Even though this voice inside of me was yearning, it was pushing me, it was nudging me forward to become an artist, right? Because I'm a creator and I need to create. And I assumed I had no talent. Everything went in a box, went under the bed. Right? So what I didn't understand was what the learning process was. How we learn anything. There are 4 stages, right? So you're going to identify yourself at some point in those stages. What I find is when I explain this to artists, most of them identify themselves as being too far along the 4 stages, when in reality they're more up the starting end, right? So you need to really think about this. I mean, it doesn't really matter deciding where you are. Just know that it's a 4-stage process that you will move through if you want to become one of the great artists, or, you know, a very good working professional artist. So those 4 stages, we all start out being unconsciously incompetent, right? So we're incompetent, but we don't even know, right? So we don't know what we don't know. When I got all those art supplies for the first time, I had no idea what a primary color was, or how to mix 2 primary colors to get a secondary color, or understand composition. I didn't even know that language, right? So I was unconscious of the fact that I didn't know anything. I didn't know what I didn't know. I just thought that artists just picked up a brush and they were geniuses, and paint went on a canvas and masterpieces happened. I didn't understand that there were fundamental skills and knowledge, and, you know, so when people start out, we all start with that place of we don't even know what we don't know, right? If I said to you today, I want you to go and become an expert in rocket fuel technology, Well, you wouldn't even know what, unless you are in that space or an engineer, you wouldn't even know what language to use to identify what you don't know right now. So you're incompetent in the field, but you're not even aware of how incompetent you are. Okay, so that's where we all start out, and that's where I was in 2006. I did my very first painting. Now, what happens is when we have a go at painting, right, we start to become conscious of the fact that we're incompetent, right? So now, I start pushing paint around on a canvas, and I get frustration because I can't get the effect that I want, right? So I've now got conscious awareness of how much I don't know, right? And I start mixing color, and I end up with mud, and I don't know why, and I don't know how to fix it, right? So we know that there's a problem. We know that there's a gap in our skill or our ability, and we think it's, we're just not gifted. But in reality, it's just basic mechanical skills and knowledge that we lack, and we become consciously aware of it. And of course, what happens when you get to that point when you're consciously aware that you don't know what you're doing, you become frustrated, right? So for me, that happened after that very first painting. Everything went in a box and it went under the table or under the bed. For others, they might be in a period of bliss for a while, blissfully unaware of the fact that I don't know what they're doing, and they might push on, which is perfectly fine. There's no right or wrong with this at all. I'm reaching out to the people who want to become great artists and want to become full-time working artists with this message. So when you become consciously aware that you don't know what you don't know, and you don't have the skills and ability, and you're aware of that, you hit a period of frustration. And how long you stay in that frustration period is up to you, right? How quickly can you gain the knowledge, and how quickly can you practice enough to move through that period? For me, that took a few years, probably 4 or 5 realistically. And there's still things I don't know. I'm learning all the time, but I've got enough of the basics down to become a good artist, right? And that's the point you need to get to. So we start off unconsciously incompetent, then we move to becoming conscious of our incompetence. The next step is we become consciously competent, right? So consciously competent. Now I understand values, and I know that if I'm going to make that mountain look like it's further behind the front one, I need to, lighten the value. I need to cool the temperature. I need to grade off, right? So I know what to do. I'm consciously aware of it, and I'm competent in that I can produce that result. But when I mix up the next color, I have to think about it. I have to think, what would be the best brush to use? How do I mix that color? How do I, put a highlight tone on that tree or whatever it is, right? I'm consciously aware of it, and I'm competent, but I'm having to think about it all the time, okay? That's a good place to be, because when you get to that place, you can start to produce some pretty good looking paintings, right? But what tends to happen when you're in this third phase where you're consciously thinking about and you're aware of what you need to do, but you have the competence to actually pull it off. In that phase, what tends to happen is we block the creative surge and flow and that artistry that comes in to make a really great painting or great artist. So we tend to be blocking that energy flow because we're so caught up in our thoughts about what am I doing, what brush do I need, which would be better, and we're thinking about everything. Over time, we move to a point where we stop thinking and we just start acting from our unconscious, right? So we become unconsciously competent. We've got enough of the skills, the knowledge, the fundamentals, and we've practiced them enough where we don't have to think about them, okay? We become unconsciously competent in what we're doing. And that's the point that all really good, the very best artists, great artists, they all get to that point. And it's a good place to aim for, because when you get there, you can produce paintings, you can create really great looking artwork and be in the zone, the flow, without thinking about what color, what brush, and what am I doing next, what's the next step. You don't have to think about that. It just flows through you, and your ability to be able to creatively express yourself raises to a new level. And I think it's a fantastic place to be and a great place to aim to get to. Right? Now, you can't force yourself through that process. It takes study of the knowledge and skills and fundamentals, and I'm always learning more and continuing to study pretty much every day. I'm trying to learn something new about how to be a great artist, right? So that process never stops. and then consistent and repetitious painting, pushing paint around, doing a few thousand paintings, right, is what will get you to the point where you become unconsciously competent, right? You no longer think about it, and this creative surge of energy just flows through you. And that's when you really start to produce great art, I believe. And the very best artists, I think, are in that place. And it's a great place to get to. And it's definitely where you should be aiming to get to if you're serious about becoming, a great artist or a full-time working artist like myself. You want to focus on getting to that place. And there's a passage of time, and there's the law of consistent and compounding effort that needs to come into play. I'll do a video about those another time for you. And I'll also do a video, if you're interested, on how to become a full-time working artist. Because then if you want to become a full-time working artist and make your living from your art, then that third component, remember I said there are three components. There's the knowledge and skills, there's the practice, and then there's this third component which you need to become good at in order to become a full-time working artist. And I'll talk about that in another video if there's enough interest. So I hope that's helped. Try and identify where you are in that process right now, but most people think they're too far up this end. You're probably more likely down that end, right? And then just put in place a program of study and practice and being consistent, and plan over the next year to do the next 3 years to do 1,000 paintings, and you will definitely move further up that scale to becoming unconsciously competent and becoming a great artist. Hope that's helped. Love to hear your comments and thoughts. Talk to you soon. Cheers.